everyone, my name is Nicholas James, and today we're going to be talking about Angry Joe versus fans who think that he's a terrible film critic. Let's discuss. So a couple days ago, Angry Joe made a video about people's reaction to his review of Alita Battle Angel. Now, he gave it an admirable 6 out of 10, which, if you know anything about the film critic circle, a 6 out of 10 is not terrible. It's slightly above average. If you go on a pain scale, average is kind of like a 5. An average pain is a 5, right? 10 is like extreme. And that's kind of how film critics, most of the time, like people like Ralph Seppi, or Your Movie Sucks, they usually give movie scores out of 10. I don't really do it personally. I follow more the Chris Stuckman approach and just go, hey, let's do letter grades, because that's kind of what I'm more used to is letter grades because of schooling and all this other stuff. But he got some flack because he gave Alita Battle Angel a 6 out of 10. Now, if you currently look on Rotten Tomatoes, the current audience score is about a 93. Comparatively, you get a critic score recommendation rate. I want to make this very fucking clear. If you look on the Rotten Tomatoes website and you look at the actual tomato meter score, that is the amount of critics who would be able to recommend the movie. That's not the actual score that every critic gave it. If you look at all the individual critic scores, some people gave it a different review. Chris Stuckman, for example, gave it a B-, and I think I gave it a B- as well. It's not that bad of a movie. If you want my thoughts, check out my Valentine's Day weekend recap video, where I talk about 2 other films, Isn't It Romantic and Happy Death Day to You. But when it comes to Alita Battle Angel, yeah, I kind of agree a lot with Joe in that review. In his review of Alita Battle Angel, it does have a lot of cheesy dialogue, the romance doesn't quite work so well, and the bad guys are not necessarily the most two-dimensional things. They're pretty much not really human, they're one-dimensional, and their plan is kind of, generic. But when you really look at it, it's a movie that has enjoyable elements, including the whole CGI aspect. And while, yes, it does adapt the anime in a pretty respectful way, there does, again, adaptation versus how the movie actually goes is generally one of those things is kind of a back and forth, especially with us fans. If I were to look at Marvel films, like there are plenty of people out there that don't like any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, and that's fine. And some of my own personal bias is that I love superhero films, so I'm going to judge it based on a superhero movie. Not necessarily as a full film. If I were to do that, some of my favorite superhero films aren't necessarily going to hold up very well. But, again, I might change that in the future. But for most of us, for most of us on the internet, we try not to script our reviews. Granted, I've started to do it a little bit more just to get my thoughts all down, because sometimes I forget certain details. If I want to explain a little bit more, I forget certain details that I want to actually divulge into. And in fact, I've actually talked to some friends about my own reviews and how they're a little bit surface level, and I've been trying to make them a little bit more better as time goes on. But you got to understand, when you're a film critic on YouTube, especially ones who put out reviews day and date, because a lot of us don't get to go see early advanced screenings and have a large amount of time to think about the movie reviews. And when you're on YouTube, especially, it's something that doesn't quite work out so well, because we have to deal with things like the YouTube algorithm. Certain movies will have their popularity that very weekend, and then it'll just drop off. Not a lot of people will start watching those reviews afterwards, so we got to get them out day and date of the movie, because if we don't, we're not going to get a lot of clicks. You can even look at my own channel if you want to. A lot of my movie reviews are day and date of the actual movie being released. And that is something that is kind of a growing concern for many people, is that for certain critics, for a lot of critics, they get to see these movies, these big budget movies, way earlier than any of us get to. Any of us, filmmakers, any of us film lovers, we have to wait until Thursday night preview screenings in order to watch it so that we can put out a movie review either Friday or Saturday. And that is something that can be a bit stressful for some of us. Not saying that all of our faults are solely reliant on us being able to see the film early, but it would help with giving a better understanding of the film if we're allowed to have a little bit more time to ruminate on the film and all of its details, so that we can give a better review. And that is something that a lot of us don't have the time for, because we have to beat the YouTube algorithm. We have to get those clicks. And that is kind of where a lot of our critical integrity can kind of falter, is that when it comes to all the pressures of the algorithm, you don't get a fair shake at the movie. Sometimes a lot of our critical perceptions of the film are pretty much immediate. And even Angry Joe looks at Star Wars The Last Jedi, which was one of his more divisive reviews, where in subsequent videos, he went from a 7 out of 10 to 6 out of 10, and then from 6 out of 10 to 4 out of 10, below average, which isn't bad, but it's still a little bit below average. And granted, while I still disagree with one thing in this video being that, he got the correct opinion, and I'll get into that in a second, when you're given time to ruminate on a movie, you start to notice little things, and that's something that can help give you a better understanding of how the film is, right? Sometimes people can get that very instantly, and they're really good at that. But some people need a little bit more time to ruminate. And I'm not saying that even with ruminating, you still can't have your same opinions as you were then, but sometimes that happens, Again, with Angry Joe and The Last Jedi, again, I don't quite agree with his opinion, but when it comes to his opinions on The Last Jedi, he's fully in his right to say, hey, I didn't quite enjoy it as much as everyone else did. It's not exactly the perfect Star Wars film. Again, that's his prerogative. The divide between critics and audiences has been something that has been talked about to death on the internet. You can look up any film essay out there that's on the topic, and you pretty much get the same response. Both sides of the argument have their own different reasonings for how they rate a film. When you start to, critique films, you no longer kind of become a film moviegoer, right? You don't necessarily become an average moviegoer. You start gaining a little bit more of a hindsight. You get more of a different, sense of how certain things go. Like Joe said in the video, which I'm responding to a little bit, like he said, when it comes to certain inflections that people give in the dialogue, how they present themselves, how the scene is moved, how the scene is edited, things like that can definitely hinder some people's enjoyment. For example, with Venom, I had kind of a dichotomy, if you will, between me loving it because it was so overly corny, while at the same time acknowledging, yeah, it's kind of a shit film, from mostly every perspective. So, as a critic, you still have that sort of, you still have that sense of, hey, I want to enjoy this, but at the same time, there's certain elements that I don't quite like. And that's just all a matter of personal opinion, right? Your enjoyment of a film is predicated on what you personally feel and what you personally believe on the inside. That's all interpretive. Film as a medium is interpretive. Every single art form out there, whether it be music, books, everything's interpretive. However, we do have objective things that we look at. How a thing is edited to convey certain moods or certain behaviors, whether it be through characterization, through the progression of a story. Does the editing, in terms of the speed of the editing, match the scene in terms of how it works, right? And that's a lot of things of what we as critics look for. But when it comes to audiences, I can understand where audiences come from too. Some audiences don't look at the finer details, right? They want to be, sucked into the story. So story matters to them a lot. And story matters to critics as well, but not in a very different way. You know, if they were personally moved by the story, even if the movie doesn't quite make sense, then that's their prerogative, right? Their enjoyment is a much different enjoyment than how a critic's would be. So this whole debate of critics versus audiences will never go away because of, you know, personal inflections, personal beliefs, right? You know, and again, going back to the whole correct opinion thing, I don't think there is ever going to be a correct opinion when it comes to movies. For example, right? Many people can consider The Room to be a movie where it is so bad it's good. Some people will even look at it and say it's just a shit film. Why are we even laughing at it? But I've met people who genuinely love the film. Not unironically, right? They think it's a masterpiece. And are they wrong for that? No. In fact, I don't think a lot of, you know, people's beliefs in films that they like, I don't think that's a wrong opinion. Sure, I've met people who liked Suicide Squad. I've met people who liked Rogue One. I've met people who've liked The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Do I think that they're wrong? No. I don't think they have a wrong opinion. Sure, the common consensus can be that The Room is you know, bad, right? But it's so bad it's good. But again, these outlier opinions are not bad. You know, and I don't think Joe should be shamed for giving an opinion that, even if it is his, is an outlier, right? Even in his video, you know, the reason why he puts out his opinions is not necessarily to piss you off. It's to, you know, give an honest review, give an honest take. And if he thought that Alita Battle Angel was slightly above average, that's his prerogative. That's his deal. You know, for me, I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was just kind of like dumb fun that you can enjoy. It's not technically well made, but I thought it was really good. There's a lot of really nice, intricate details in the CG and the Weta Workshop stuff with the practical and CG effects was really well handled. You know, but it's definitely a different take, right? And so the whole point of giving a review in the end is giving our personal thoughts, our personal opinions on a film. And whether or not they be contradictory to the mainstream or even in solidarity with the mainstream, it's definitely an opinion. It's our hot take. And at the end of the day, with our reviews, what we tell you is how we personally view the film. We're not telling you why you should like the film. We're telling you why we like the film, or why we didn't think the film was so good, or why we thought the film was shit. Is our personal interpretations based off of our personal understandings of A, how a movie is made, B, our personal enjoyment, and C, how the audience responded to it. And you'll see it in my best list category. There's actually one film that managed to get a little bit higher than some of the other films, all because of the audience that I was in with the film. So that's a bit different. So, word to the wise, you can disagree with everyone's opinion, right? You can disagree with Angry Joe and his opinions on Alita Battle Angel. That's fine. But, as he points out in his video, name-calling is not a good, proper way to facilitate discussion, right? Because as a film lover, as a film critic, and as a film enthusiast myself, and a filmmaker, the proper way to facilitate film discussion is not to call people names for things that they liked or disliked, right? Right? The proper way to facilitate discussion is to have an equal understanding of who the individuals are, and discussing the film with a respectable tone, right? It's just basic manners. And I feel like that, again, I know everyone's been on the internet, that's how the internet works, but it really shouldn't, right? I'm more about giving a respectful conversation nowadays to films, and to people who love the films, or even dislike the films. I don't try to come in and be like, oh, my opinion is so much mightier than yours because I'm a film critic and I'm a filmmaker. No. No, my opinion is no more valid than your opinion. What you find personally is your own opinion. And while I may disagree or agree with your opinion, that doesn't necessarily mean my opinion will change, or even yours. You know, if I give my position, it doesn't necessarily mean you should in turn change your position. Again, interpreting art is everyone's personal detail. Art is in the eye of the beholder, and sometimes people will have disagreements. It's much like with everything, you know, ordering McNuggets versus a Big Mac, or Pepsi versus Coke, or Democrat versus Republican, or any other thing. Everyone will have a different sense of what they perceive. And I don't think we should, as a society, as people on the internet, condemn people because they give a different opinion than yours. Just because they give a contradictory position to your own position on a film does not necessarily mean that they're wrong, right? You can have a respectful dialogue. You can, again, no name calling. That's just what I'm asking for. Don't name call people, and I don't think Angry Joe is a shit critic because he gives a different opinion than everyone else. In fact, you know, he even says he double checked with other YouTubers, right, to see what their opinions were, and pretty much they were the same thing for him. You know, they were in agreement a lot of the time. So, again, maybe it's just a matter of perception, you know, but I don't, again, just don't go around telling people that their opinion is shit because you disagree with them, right? That's just all I'm gonna say, you know. Have a little bit more respect for your fellow person, right? Your fellow human, right? Because we all have flaws, right? We all have our personal interpretation, our personal opinion, and our personal thoughts are our own, and we would like to share them with you. And if you disagree, that's fine. But don't act like an asshole on the internet. That's just all I have to say. Peace.